If I betrayed you one day, what would you do? Late at night, my wife suddenly asked me this. I put down the file in my hand and laughed. Why ask this out of the blue? Really? I smiled. What if I said I might spend the rest of my life seeking revenge? Would you believe that? Friday, 3:17 p.m. I stared at the marriage license folder in front of me, a sense of irony washing over me. 3 years ago, Evelyn Sterling and I walked into our marriage with this very document. Now, we were using it to bring our relationship to an end. The air conditioner hummed. Evelyn sat across from me, her nails tapping rhythmically on the table. She was wearing the champagne silk blouse we picked out together for our anniversary last year. Now, the second button was undone. I habitually reached out to remind her, then swallowed the words. Sign it. She pushed the divorce agreement towards me, her movements crisp and efficient. The office was filled with the scent of her favorite lily of the valley perfume. But at this moment, it felt suffocating. I looked down at the agreement, forcing my voice to remain steady. The house and the car are yours. I'll transfer the company shares as well, but the apartment where my mother lives. Don't worry, I'm not interested in that old place, she interrupted. Her tone was bland, as if she were discussing the weather. Your mother has always been kind to me. I wouldn't take her home. The mention of my mother made my hand tremble slightly. Last Tuesday, she was still making Evelyn's favorite creamy mushroom soup. Dear, are you too tired lately? You look a little pale, Mother had fretted as she stirred the pot. Evelyn had simply replied, Martha, I'm not hungry, and turned to go upstairs. My mother stood downstairs with a bowl of soup for a long time, long enough for it to grow cold. Are you really sure about this? My pen hovered above the agreement, the ink bleeding into a small dark spot on the paper. It was the first mark we had ever made on a document in our 6 years together, 3 years of marriage. Evelyn tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture I knew all too well. She always did that subconsciously whenever she was determined to do something. I gripped the pen tightly. 3 months ago, we were still planning to have a child. A daughter, Evelyn had said, leaning against my shoulder. She must be as gentle as you. Her voice had held a sweet lilt and her eyes had sparkled like stars. But now, those same eyes held only detachment and indifference. There's no reason, she said, her fingers still tapping. Or rather, there are too many reasons. She paused. We're not suited for each other. That's all. Not suited. 6 years, over 1,000 days and nights, summed up so casually as not suited. I remembered the text message I'd received last night from an unknown number, buddy, want to see a video of your wife with someone else? I had deleted the message and blocked the number. I trusted Evelyn. Or perhaps, I was too afraid to find out the truth. Fine. I picked up the pen and signed my name on the divorce agreement. The scratching sound of the pen was exceptionally clear in the quiet office, like something tearing across my heart. She took the agreement, glanced at it, and the corners of her lips curled into a smile I couldn't decipher. She pulled an envelope from her bag and pushed it towards me. Here are the house deed and car keys. Keep them. No need. I stood up, straightening my suit. I bought them for you. Keep them. She looked stunned, seemingly not expecting me to say that. Sunlight slanted in from the window, illuminating the side of her face. For a moment, I saw her as she was 6 years ago, the first time I met her in the university library. She had looked just like this, quietly reading in the sunlight with light dancing in her hair. Arthur Pendleton, she suddenly spoke, her voice tinged with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Do you hate me? I turned my back to her, looking out at the plane trees outside. Autumn was coming, and the leaves were already starting to turn yellow. As I pushed open the door, I heard her softly say something behind me. But I didn't turn around, just as I had pretended not to hear her footsteps every time she came home these past 3 months. The hallway was quiet, only the sound of my shoes echoing on the floor. The elevator arrived quickly, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the first floor. I took out my phone and scrolled to the blocked number. Perhaps it was time to watch that video. But before that, I had to go to the hospital to see my mother. Her heart hadn't been well lately, and I couldn't let her know about Evelyn and me. At least, not yet. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A new message. It was from someone named Julian. Heard you and Evelyn want to get a divorce. Free tonight. Drinks on me. I stared at the name for a long time, then deleted the message. The elevator reached the first floor, and I stepped out of the building. The autumn wind swirled around me, carrying a few fallen leaves and the faintest hint of lily of the valley. It was Evelyn's scent, and now even that scent was fading away with the wind. The hospital corridor was always like this, brightly lit, yet the light never seemed to reach the heart. At 2:13 a.m., I stood outside the ICU, dialing a familiar number. A pause, then the background noise suddenly softened. I'm busy tonight, maybe another day. It's an acute myocardial infarction. The doctor said it's not looking good. My voice was soft, afraid to disturb the nurse dozing at the end of the hall. I'm in a meeting, her tone remained calm. And I have to go on a business trip later. Tell Martha I send my best. A meeting. At 2 a.m. The faint sound of cheerful music and clinking glasses in the background stung my ears. Okay. I hung up. Hurried footsteps approached from the nurse's station. The doctor on duty rushed over. Family member. She had another episode just now, but she's stable for now. However. He hesitated. It's best to inform the other family members. Anyone who can come should come. My hand holding the phone trembled slightly. Other family members. Besides Evelyn, I had no one else. Okay, I understand. I nodded to the doctor. Thank you for your hard work. The doctor sighed and turned away. Behind me, the monotonous beeping of the machines in the ICU sounded like a merciless countdown. I opened my phone's photo album and scrolled to a picture from last month's Thanksgiving. In the photo, my mother was beaming. Evelyn stood beside her, one arm linked through hers, the other flashing a peace sign. Evelyn had specifically taken time off that day, saying she wanted to celebrate the holiday with Mom. Martha, I bought you blueberry muffins, your favorite. That's what Evelyn had said before the picture was taken. Mom was so happy she almost cried. Good, good. Our Evelyn is the sweetest. But now, the sweet Evelyn was clinking glasses at a 2 a.m. party. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I instinctively thought it was Evelyn calling back. Unlocking it, I saw a text from an unknown number. Dude, want to see where your wife is right now? A blurred thumbnail accompanied the message. It looked like a dimly lit bar, figures barely visible. The smell of disinfectant hit me. Mom lay on a white bed, thinner than she was last week. Wires from various machines snaked out from under the covers, forming a complex web. Arthur. Her voice was weak. Is Evelyn here? Did she come? Evelyn is working overtime. I forced a smile. She asked me to send her regards. That child. Mom's dry lips moved. She works too hard. You need to be more understanding. Understanding. I looked at my mother's pale face, speechless. Just last week, they were laughing and chatting. Evelyn had promised to take Mom to an art exhibition this weekend. Martha, I heard they're exhibiting an original Monet painting. Your favorite. That's what she had said. Mom took my hand. You and Evelyn. She trailed off. Is everything all right? Yes. I squeezed her hand. Everything's fine. That's good. Mom smiled weakly. As long as you two are happy, I'm content. The ICU door opened and a nurse entered, signaling that my time was up. I had to let go of Mom's hand. Mom, you rest well. I'll come see you tomorrow. Mom. She nodded. You go back and rest, too. Don't let Evelyn worry. Outside the ICU, I leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. The air was thick with the smell of disinfectant, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was a text from Evelyn. Sorry, there was an important dinner I had to attend. Why don't you hire a caregiver for Martha? I'll cover the cost. Evelyn said she would cover the cost, but I knew her recent shopping bills were high. Last week, she bought a Chanel scarf. The transaction notification showed it was $2,800. I remembered that scarf. Just last month when we were at the store together, she had said it was too expensive, not worth buying. After withdrawing the money, I stopped at the vending machine. There was one bottle left of Mom's favorite honey grapefruit tea. I bought it and put it in an insulated bag. She could have it when she woke up tomorrow. Dawn was breaking, and the hospital's morning rounds were about to begin. Nurses pushed medicine carts down the hallway, the wheels rolling loudly in the quiet morning. My phone vibrated. It was another text from the unknown number. If you want to know the truth, tonight at 8, Highfield Hotel, room 2018. This time, I didn't delete the message. At 7:55 p.m., I stood in the hallway of the Highfield Hotel on the 20th floor, staring at a familiar figure at the far end. He was on the phone, his voice low, but I caught a few words. "Don't worry, he won't come." I watched as he hung up, pulled out a key card, and unlocked the door to room 2018. He didn't go in but stood there waiting. She wore the pale blue dress I bought her for our anniversary 3 months ago. Her hair was styled the way I loved, but the expression on her face was unfamiliar. "Julian," she said softly, her voice laced with a tenderness I'd never heard her use before. "Have you been waiting long?" The name was a dull knife twisting in my heart. "No," the man replied with a smile, his arms slipping around her shoulders. "I just arrived." I watched them disappear behind the closing door, suddenly understanding the truth the text message had hinted at. The elevator stopped on the 18th floor. A young couple stepped in, laughing and chatting. The girl held a bouquet of roses, her face radiant with happiness. It reminded me of my college days, how I used to buy Evelyn roses for every date. "Business has been slow," the florist would sigh. "Good thing I have you as a regular." Now, those roses had long since withered, and the sweet memories had turned to dust. I arrived at the hospital at 8:30 p.m. How did Julian get that Chanel scarf? Why was Evelyn wearing the dress from our anniversary to see him? The lingering glances I'd witnessed at the cafe, they hadn't been my imagination. The surgeon emerged, removing his mask. The surgery was successful, but recovery is crucial. "She's conscious now. You can go in and see her, but keep it brief." The smell of antiseptic filled the intensive care unit. My mother lay in bed, thinner than before. Seeing me, she managed a weak smile. "Is Evelyn still working?" I took her hand and nodded. "Yes, she sent her love." Dawn was breaking as I left the ward. A radio at the nurse's station played an old song. "Is love really, like they say, always more beautiful when laced with lies?" She was laughing. Truly laughing in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. "I've been waiting for you," Julian said, taking her hand. "For the past 3 years, I've regretted letting you go." "Julian," Evelyn murmured, looking down. "Me, too." I closed the video and stared out at the rising sun. In our marriage, I have been nothing but a substitute. Those moments I thought were filled with warmth were probably just pretense on her part. While cleaning out my mother's room, I found a diary tucked away in her nightstand drawer. It was an ordinary notebook, its light blue cover faded and yellowed, a small tea stain clinging to the bottom right corner. Mother had always kept a diary ever since I could remember. "Arthur," she would often say, "life's beautiful moments deserve to be recorded." But now, she lay in a hospital bed, too weak to even hold a pen. I opened the diary. The last entry was from 3 days ago. "Saw Evelyn and that man together again today. They were at the cafe across the street from our complex. Evelyn was laughing so happily. My heart aches. I don't know if I should tell Arthur. He trusts her so much. How heartbroken he would be if he knew the truth. The doctor says my heart condition is worsening and I might need surgery. But I can't tell Arthur. He's been working so hard lately. Evelyn also seems to have something on her mind. She rarely comes home for dinner. Son, I'm sorry. I failed to take care of this family for you." The last sentence was shaky, as if she'd stopped writing mid-thought. That night, my mother suffered a heart attack and was hospitalized. I closed the diary, a sudden thought striking me. I hurried to the study and sure enough, in Evelyn's dressing table drawer, I found another diary. It was a pink notebook, its gold-embossed diary still gleaming. I bought it for her in Paris during our honeymoon last year. Dear Diary, I ran into Julian again today. He's still so impressive, so charming in a suit. Seeing him reminds me of our time in university. Back then, he left me for his career, but now he says he's never forgotten me. Today, Arthur and I bought a new house. He said he wanted to give me a warm home, but looking at him, I feel an emptiness inside. Maybe I shouldn't have accepted his proposal. Julian said he's going to acquire Arthur's company, and then he'll be Arthur's boss. He says, that way, we can see each other more often. I know I'm wronging Arthur, but I can't control my heart. My hands trembled. It was all premeditated, a carefully orchestrated scheme, starting with the company merger. I put down the diary and opened my email. Mr. Pendleton, the HR manager, said apologetically in the message, this is the new management's decision. We're helpless. I looked at Julian Thorne's signature on the termination notice and felt a surge of bitterness. This man was not only stealing my wife but also destroying my career. As I began to pack my desk, my secretary, Sarah, rushed in. Mr. Pendleton, the hospital called. Your mother's condition has worsened. It was 3 p.m. when I arrived at the hospital. The nurses said my mother's heart rate was unstable, and doctors were performing emergency treatment. Mr. Pendleton, the attending physician, said gravely, your mother's will to live is weak. She keeps calling out the name Evelyn. If possible, could you ask your wife to come to the hospital? I took out my phone and saw a message from Evelyn. On a business trip, very busy these 2 days. Might not be able to go to the hospital. But 5 minutes ago, I had just seen her car in the hospital parking lot, the white Mini Cooper I gave her for our anniversary last year. I walked to the hospital's back garden and, as expected, saw her and Julian on a bench. Evelyn was leaning on his shoulder, whispering something. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on her face. Julian, her voice was soft, but I heard it clearly. When this is all over, we can finally be together openly. Yes. Julian embraced her. Just wait a little longer. Soon, once the merger is complete, Arthur Pendleton will leave with his tail between his legs. Then we'll have nothing to worry about. I stood behind the tree, clenching my fists. In their eyes, my life was nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. Back in the ward, my mother had woken up. She gave me a weak smile. Arthur. You're here. Where's Evelyn? I hesitated. She's in a meeting. She asked me to send her regards. You, too. My mother seemed to want to say something but suddenly started coughing violently. The monitor's alarm blared, and nurses rushed in, pushing me out. Crash cart. Notify cardiology immediately. The doctor's voice came from inside the ward. I stood in the corridor, watching the medical staff rush back and forth, feeling dizzy. At that moment, I wanted to rush to the back garden and confront Evelyn. Ask her why she was doing this to me, to the mother who loved her like her own daughter. My phone buzzed. Another email from HR. Please come to the conference room at 10 a.m. tomorrow to complete your exit procedures. Attached was a photo of the new CEO, Julian Thorne, speaking at a morning meeting. Under the new management structure, we must remove all obstacles hindering the company's development. In the photo, he was impeccably dressed, smiling, and on the projection screen behind him was a list of laid-off employees. My name was at the very top. I put away my phone and looked at the sunset outside the window. The clouds on the horizon were as red as blood, just like my shattered heart. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital morgue reflected off my mother's peaceful face. I'm sorry. We did everything we could. The doctor's words echoed in my ears. She passed peacefully, kept calling the name Evelyn. At the end, I stood beside her, hands trembling uncontrollably. Mr. Pendleton, a nurse whispered, your wife is here. I turned to see Evelyn standing at the doorway. She wore a champagne-colored dress, her makeup impeccable. Dressed like this, she looked less like she was visiting someone in a hospital and more like she was attending an important event. Martha. Her voice trembled, tears welling in her eyes. I scoffed internally. Were those tears genuine or just another performance? You came, I said, deliberately formal. Mother kept calling your name before she passed. She froze, seemingly surprised by my words. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, her phone rang. She instinctively glanced at it, her face draining of color. I leaned in close enough to see a message from Julian. Evelyn, the chairman is still waiting for us at the Highfield. Hurry. Go ahead, I said softly. Don't keep important people waiting. Mother's already gone. A little more time won't make a difference. Evelyn stood there, tears finally streaming down her face. Without another word, she turned and hurried out of the morgue. The clicking of her heels echoed in the empty corridor. Each click a hammer blow against my heart. I turned back to my mother's serene face. Her death was so sudden, she didn't even have a chance to say a final goodbye. A nurse approached. Mr. Pendleton, we found this while going through your mother's belongings. She handed me an envelope. She specifically asked for it to be given to you after she was gone. Inside, I found a letter and a photograph. The photo showed Evelyn and Julian chatting happily in a cafe. The timestamp indicated it was taken 3 months ago. On the back, a line of writing, "Son, forgive my selfishness, but I can't stand by and watch you be deceived." My hands trembled as I opened the letter. My mother's shaky handwriting filled the page. Arthur, when you read this letter, I'll be gone. Forgive me for keeping this from you, but I couldn't bear to see you in the dark. 3 months ago, I stumbled upon Evelyn with her first love. At first, I thought it was a chance encounter, but then I noticed them meeting regularly at the cafe across the street. I investigated the man and learned he is Julian Thorne, the one about to acquire your company. I overheard their conversation that day and learned it was all a scheme. They plan to use the acquisition to make you lose your job and then divorce to destroy your life. Son, I know you love Evelyn deeply, but some people are simply not worth it. My heart has been worsening, and the doctor said I might not have much time left. I hesitated to tell you the truth, fearing you wouldn't be able to handle it. But now I understand. Knowing the truth is better than being deceived. In the bottom drawer of my bedside table, you'll find a USB drive. It contains recordings of their conversations I secretly made. You trusted Evelyn so much that you refused to even look at those warning messages. But now you must face reality. Son, I'm gone. But you must live on strong. Remember, there are many people who love you in this world. Don't let someone unworthy break your heart. The last few lines were blurred as if stained by tears. I knelt before my mother's body, tears finally overflowing. She knew the truth all along but chose to bear it alone just to protect me one last time. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email from Julian regarding my resignation procedures. Please come to the company tomorrow to complete them. Remember, this is just the beginning. I wiped my tears and carefully put away the letter and photo. Mother, rest assured, I won't disappoint you again. Since they went to such lengths to set up this elaborate scheme, I'll play along. As I stepped out of the morgue, night had fallen. The autumn wind howled, swirling fallen leaves around me. Mother, watch over me from above. Your son will no longer be the fool who is easily deceived. Mother's ashes rested in the home's memorial room. The lingering sandalwood incense only emphasized the emptiness of the room. I sat at my desk, clutching the USB drive I'd found in her bedside table. What secrets did this tiny device hold? My hand trembled as I plugged it into the computer. A folder opened automatically, revealing a dozen or so audio files neatly organized by date. Mother had meticulously labeled each with the time and location. I clicked on the first file. Over the background noise of a cafe, a familiar voice emerged. Julian, are you sure this is right? It was Evelyn, a hint of hesitation in her voice. Don't worry, this plan has been in the works for a long time. Julian's voice was relaxed and confident. The merger has already been approved by the board. Arthur Pendleton's department will be cut soon. Once he's unemployed, how can he compete with us? But, he's been so good to me. Evelyn, don't be naive. He's just a pawn. If I hadn't told you to get close to him, do you think someone with his background could ever be worthy of you? The clinking of a teacup on a table punctuated the recording, followed by Julian continuing, we've finally waited 3 years for this opportunity. Once the merger is complete, I'll be his boss. Then, not only will his job be mine, but even that pitiful amount of stock he owns will have to be handed over. My grip tightened around the mouse. So, our meeting 3 years ago was all an elaborate scheme. I played the next file. This time, the background was a restaurant, the date a month ago. The chairman has agreed. Julian's voice was laced with triumph. This merger is ostensibly about business integration, but it's actually a shell game. Once we get Arthur's shares, we can do a backdoor listing. But what about Arthur? Julian scoffed. He's just a stepping stone waiting to be swept aside. By the way, how's the divorce proceeding going? It's in progress. Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. He said I can keep the house and the car. The fool is truly lovesick. Julian's tone dripped with sarcasm. But it saves us the trouble. By the way, how's his mother? The recording ended abruptly. I stared at the screen, my fingers drumming unconsciously on the desk. So, even my mother's illness was just a tool to be exploited. The third recording was from last week at a cafe near the company. Julian, are we really going to do this? Evelyn's voice was filled with unease. His mother is in the hospital. Shouldn't we? Evelyn, it's too late for regrets now. Julian's voice hardened. Don't forget who pulled you back from the brink of bankruptcy. Your father's company, your brother's tuition fees, these debts need to be repaid. I shot to my feet. Was this the truth? Evelyn approached me to repay a debt. I continued listening. The hidden truths unraveled one by one. Evelyn's father had nearly gone bankrupt 3 years ago. Julian had secretly helped him, and the price was Evelyn's involvement in their scheme. I opened the folders on my computer and found all the documents related to the merger. As I read through them, a shocking corporate conspiracy came into focus. Julian and the capital group behind him had long targeted our company as a shell. They needed a tech company already listed on the NASDAQ for a backdoor listing, and our company fit the bill perfectly. As one of the company's veterans, I held key shares. If I resisted the merger, their plan would be thwarted. They needed someone to break my will, and Evelyn was their chosen pawn. A notification pinged on my computer. It was the final notice from HR. Please complete your exit procedures by 10 a.m. tomorrow. Failure to do so will be considered a voluntary resignation. I checked the time. It was almost 11 p.m. My mother's belongings were scattered on the desk. A photo caught my eye. It was our wedding picture, Evelyn smiling radiantly. Now I wondered how much of that smile had been genuine. Suddenly, a file name caught my attention. Merger backroom deal evidence. It was the last file Mother had created. The timestamp showed the night before she died. I opened it. Inside was a complete record of the transactions. Every fund transfer, every detail of the operation was meticulously documented. Even in her final moments, Mother had been gathering evidence for me. I wiped my eyes and opened a Word document. I began to write a whistleblower report. This time, they would pay. Not to reclaim anything, but to tell my mother in heaven, your son has finally grown up. The autumn night air was cool. I walked to the window, looking at the lights still on in Julian's office in the distance. Very well, let's see who wins this game in the end. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the conference room, illuminating Julian's triumphant face. I sat quietly in the corner, watching his self-assured demeanor. 3 days ago, he had given me an ultimatum: willingly transfer my shares at a low price or face being swept out the door in the next round of layoffs. Director Pendleton, have you made your decision? He approached me, his voice laced with the arrogance of a victor. I looked up at him. Mr. Thorne, are you sure you want to discuss this here? Why not? He glanced around the room at the dozen or so shareholders and directors present. We're all sensible people. Some things are better handled quickly. Fine. I stood up and walked to the projector. Since you say so, Mr. Thorne, let's be frank. Julian's voice filled the room. The chairman has already agreed. This merger is ostensibly a business integration, but in reality, it's a reverse merger. Once we have Arthur Pendleton's shares, we can go public through a backdoor listing. Julian's face paled. He rushed forward to stop me, but I had already locked the computer screen. Don't worry, Mr. Thorne, I said with a smile. The show's just getting started. The second recording began to play. Evelyn, it's too late for regrets now. Don't forget who pulled you back from the brink of bankruptcy. Your father's company, your brother's tuition fees, these all need to be repaid. A murmur erupted in the conference room. Several senior shareholders frowned, whispering amongst themselves. Arthur Pendleton. Julian roared. What are you doing? What am I doing? I scoffed and opened a prepared PowerPoint presentation. I'm showing everyone the truth behind this so-called merger. On the projection screen, diagrams of fund flows, transaction records, and minutes from secret meetings appeared one after another. Please take a look, I explained as I navigated through the slides. The source of these offshore funds, the details of these backroom dealings, and the true purpose of this merger, a backdoor listing. Arthur, do you know what you're saying? Julian's voice trembled. This is confidential business information. Confidential business information. I turned and met his gaze. Or a shameful conspiracy. Mr. Thorne, what do you think the Securities and Exchange Commission will make of these confidential business matters? Just then, the door to the conference room opened. Evelyn stood there, her face pale. Perfect timing. I nodded to her. Miss Sterling, please come in and see your handiwork. The last recording played. Julian, are you sure this is right? Evelyn's voice was filled with hesitation. Don't be naive. He's just a pawn. If I hadn't told you to get close to him, do you think someone with his background would be good enough for you? Evelyn stumbled, gripping the doorframe for support. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at me. Enough. Julian suddenly yelled. Arthur Pendleton, what do you want? I took out a document and handed it to the chairman. It's simple. I want to report this illegal merger. Of course, I have more evidence which I've already submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Silence descended upon the conference room. The chairman finished reading the document, his face grim. Chairman, I can explain. No need to explain, the chairman interrupted. Security, please escort Mr. Thorne out of the company and await further investigation. As I watched security lead Julian away, I felt no sense of triumph. As I turned to gather my things, Evelyn stopped me. Arthur. I have so much to tell you. There's no need, I said, looking at her indifferently. Haven't you said enough in the past 3 years? But. She bit her lip. I really. Really what? I interrupted. Really love me? Or really saw me as your ATM? She froze, tears flowing uncontrollably. Evelyn Sterling, I said softly. You know what's most ironic? Even now, I don't hate you. I just think that these past 3 years of feelings have been utterly laughable. She lowered her head, unable to answer. Live your life well. I turned and walked toward the door. Just pretend these past 3 years were all a play. But this play is over. As I left the conference room, I heard her sobs behind me. But this time, I didn't turn back. What was over was over. Back in my office, I packed my belongings. My phone screen showed 99 missed calls, all from the same number, Evelyn Sterling. I stared at the call log, the time stretching from last night to this very moment. Accompanying them were 99 unread messages. Arthur, please answer the phone. I know I was wrong. I really do. Can you please give me a chance to explain? That day at the hospital, I really wanted to see Martha, but... Do you remember the first time we met? It was raining. Arthur, I regret it. I truly regret it. It was late at night. I sat in my study, a document spread out before me. It was the investigation report from the Securities and Exchange Commission detailing Julian and his backers' illegal operations. After half a month of investigation, the financial fraud scheme had finally surfaced. The next day at noon, I met Evelyn's father at a tea house. He looked much older than he did 3 years ago, his eyes filled with guilt and exhaustion. Arthur, his hand trembled as he lifted his teacup. Regarding this matter, our Sterling family has wronged you. I quietly watched him, waiting for him to continue. 3 years ago, the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. I I failed Evelyn. His voice choked with emotion. Uncle, I interrupted. Let the past be the past. No, he shook his head. You deserve to know the truth. 3 years ago, Julian offered to help me through the crisis on the condition that Evelyn marry you, paving the way for their merger plan. I was desperate and agreed. So, I said softly, from the beginning, it was all a scheme. Yes. He lowered his head. But Evelyn truly fell in love with you later. Over these past 3 years, she often told me how happy she was and how guilty she felt. I smiled, saying nothing. Happy? If she were truly happy, she wouldn't have been absent when my mother was on her deathbed. Now Julian has been arrested, and the company is ruined. Mr. Sterling sighed. We deserve this. But Evelyn, she truly regrets it. These past 2 weeks, she's been distraught, crying every day. Uncle, I interrupted. Some mistakes can't be fixed with an apology. I know. His voice choked again. But she really did fall in love with you. If we could go back. There are no ifs. I stood up. Everything that needs to be said has been said. I'll be going now. As I left the tea house, I saw a familiar figure hiding on the street corner. It was Evelyn. She wore a plain dress, her face pale, her eyes red and swollen. It seemed she had indeed been suffering. I turned to leave, but she quickly caught up. Arthur. What is it? I asked without turning around. I'm sorry. Her voice was thick with tears. I know an apology isn't enough, but I really regret it. Regret what? I stopped. Regret not getting more from me? Or regret that your scheme failed? No, she grabbed my arm. I really did fall in love with you. For the past 3 years, I've struggled every day, blaming myself every day. I shook her off. That day at the hospital, my mother kept calling your name as she lay dying. Where were you? She froze, tears streaming down her face. I wanted to go, but Julian said. Enough. I scoffed. What's the point of saying this now? Arthur. She sobbed. Give me a chance, please. I'm willing to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Making it up to me. I turned around, looking directly into her eyes. Tell me, how can you make up for a mother's life? How can you make up for 3 years of deception? How can you make up for the love I gave you? She stood there speechless, tears flowing uncontrollably. Evelyn Sterling. My voice was calm. You know what's most ridiculous? Even now, I still feel a pang of pain. Not because of love, but because of the injustice. The injustice of being so completely deceived. But this time, I didn't even look back. Back home, I opened my computer and received the latest notification from the Securities and Exchange Commission. The evidence against Julian Thorne was conclusive, and he would soon be handed over to the prosecutor's office. The financial group backing him would also face massive fines. Before my mother's portrait, incense smoke curled upwards. I knelt there and whispered, Mom, don't worry. I've learned to protect myself. They can't hurt me anymore. The courtroom was thick with tension. I sat in the witness box, my gaze fixed on Julian in the dock. Gone was the sharply dressed, ambitious elite. In his place sat a haggard figure in prison garb. Defendant Julian Thorne, the judge's voice boomed, solemn and imposing. The prosecution accuses you of manipulating the securities market, insider trading, and embezzlement. What do you have to say? Julian lifted his head, his eyes darting a venomous glance at me. I'm not guilty. Then let the prosecution present its evidence. The projector whirred to life, displaying a series of exhibits on a large screen, my mother's recordings, financial transaction records, minutes from clandestine meetings. The truth, in all its ugliness, was being unveiled in this hallowed hall. The evidence shows, the prosecutor declared, that the defendant began orchestrating this financial fraud 3 years ago. To achieve a backdoor listing, he exploited another's affections and manipulated the stock market, causing significant financial losses. My eyes fell on a familiar USB drive listed among the evidence, the truth my mother had bought with her life. Call witness Evelyn Sterling, the judge instructed. Evelyn walked to the stand, looking even thinner than the last time I saw her. Her voice trembled as she answered the court's questions. Yes, 3 years ago, Julian took advantage of my father's company being on the verge of bankruptcy. He asked me to get close to Arthur Pendleton to pave the way for their merger. Did you do this willingly? The prosecutor inquired. She lowered her head. At first, I was coerced. My father's company needed the funds, and my brother's tuition fees. She choked back a sob. But later, I truly fell in love with Arthur. However, Julian used my father's company as leverage, and I had no choice but to continue cooperating with him. Evelyn Sterling. Julian roared suddenly. Do you know what you're saying? I do. Evelyn lifted her head, tears welling in her eyes. I'm telling the truth. For the past 3 years, I've lived with lies and pain. Arthur was so good to me, but I betrayed his sincerity. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. I looked at Evelyn's back, recalling the scene I'd witnessed in the hospital corridor. The look in her eyes as she leaned against Julian hadn't been one of affection, but of helplessness and pain. Plaintiff witness Arthur Pendleton, the judge addressed me. Please elaborate on the merger 3 years ago. I stood and began my testimony. 3 years ago, Julian, under the guise of business integration, was actually after our company's shell resources. To achieve his goal, he orchestrated a scheme for Evelyn to approach me while simultaneously using various methods to suppress our company's stock price. Silence descended upon the courtroom once more. I continued, in the final days of her life, my mother diligently gathered evidence. The contents of this USB drive are her final gift to me. Arthur Pendleton. Julian sprang to his feet. You think you've won? Do you know who's backing me? Julian, I met his gaze calmly. Do you think saying that now has any meaning? Just then, the bailiff escorted someone into the courtroom. Everyone held their breath. It was Chairman Blackwood, the chairman of the capital group behind Julian, a notorious financial tycoon. Chairman Blackwood, the prosecutor addressed him. Please testify regarding Julian Thorne's illegal activities. Yes, Chairman Blackwood stated impassively. Mr. Thorne's actions were his own and have nothing to do with our group. We have provided all the evidence to the Securities and Exchange Commission and are willing to cooperate with the investigation. Julian's face paled. Julian Thorne, Chairman Blackwood said coldly. The business world is a battlefield. You lost. Tried to manipulate others only to be manipulated yourself. This is your retribution. It was then that I understood. After I filed my report, Chairman Blackwood had already begun to clean house, distancing himself from the mess. The business world was like that. There were no permanent friends, only permanent interests. The trial lasted the entire day. Finally, the judge announced the verdict: defendant Julian Thorne, guilty of manipulating the securities market, sentenced to 12 years imprisonment. It was dusk when I stepped out of the courthouse. Evelyn was waiting for me at the entrance. Arthur, there's no need to say anything. I interrupted her. It's over. I'm sorry, Evelyn whispered. Evelyn, I said calmly. There are no ifs in this world. Just like my mother's life. It can never be relived. I know. Her voice choked with tears. But I truly. Enough. I cut her off again. It's over. I wish you all the best in the future. As I turned to leave, her sobs echoed behind me in the twilight. Her figure seemed so lonely. I clutched the USB drive, tears blurring my vision. Mother, rest assured, I will live well. The moonlight streamed through the window, cold and clear. The autumn wind rustled the curtains. It was finally over. It was time to begin a new life. I adjusted my tie and took one last look around the home I'd lived in for 3 years. The movers had loaded most of my belongings onto the truck, leaving only a few odds and ends. In the shoe cabinet sat a pair of red high heels, a size too small. They were a birthday gift for Evelyn last year. She'd said they didn't fit but insisted on keeping them. I'll just keep them here, she'd said with a smile. I'll be able to wear them when I lose weight. Sadly, she never got the chance. On the bookshelf in the study lay my mother's favorite book, Gone with the Wind. The cover was yellowed, the corners curled. I remembered her saying, "It's not just a love story. It's a story about growth." Now, I realized she was right. These past 3 years have been my own story of growth. The pothos plant had grown lush and full. It was my mother's favorite plant. "It's easy to take care of," she'd always say. "Just like hope. As long as there's a little sunlight and water, it will thrive." I carefully wrapped the plant, ready to take it to my new home. It was a symbol of the vitality she'd left me. I paused when I reached the photo frame in the living room. It was our family portrait from last Thanksgiving. My mother sat in the middle, Evelyn and I on either side. Our smiles were so genuine. Happiness seemed within reach. Mr. Pendleton, one of the movers, interrupted my thoughts. "What should we do with these?" He gestured to a cardboard box in a corner filled with Evelyn's belongings. "Throw them away," I said, but couldn't help but glance inside. There was her favorite mug still bearing a lipstick stain, her yoga mat with her name written in the corner. And wait, what was this? I pulled a notebook from the bottom of the box. Evelyn's diary. The first entry, dated 3 years ago, read, "I saw Julian again today. He said he would help Dad through his difficulties, but on the condition that I get close to someone named Arthur. I know this is despicable, but for my family, I have no choice." Further on, "Arthur is so kind. He always brings me snacks when he comes home late from work." Looking at his earnest face, I feel a pang of guilt. Julian says this is just a transaction, but why is my heart in such turmoil? Later, "Today is our first wedding anniversary. Arthur gave me a pair of red high heels. He carefully helped me try them on, but they were too small." Seeing his disappointment, I suddenly wanted to cry. Do I really deserve someone so gentle? The last entry, dated a month ago, "Mom is gone. Leaving with disappointment in me." That day at the hospital, I was actually just outside the door, but I didn't dare go in. I was afraid to see the disappointment in her eyes, and even more afraid to face Arthur's trusting gaze. The real punishment isn't being hated, but being completely disappointed by someone who loves you deeply. I closed the diary and took a deep breath. The sincerity in those words, whether true or not, no longer mattered. Like my mother said, some mistakes once made can never be undone. "Mr. Pendleton, this diary," the mover asked again. I placed the diary back in the box. "Dispose of it as planned. Let the past be the past. What couldn't be taken with me would stay here. A new life required a fresh start." I opened the door to find no one there, only an envelope lying on the doorstep. I picked it up and recognized Evelyn's handwriting. "Arthur, when you see this letter, I will have already left the city. I owe you too much. A debt I can never repay in this lifetime, but I still want to say I'm sorry. Thank you. Take care. Evelyn." I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. In a way, this was closure. Mr. Pendleton, the foreman of the moving company, approached. "Everything is loaded. We can leave now." "Okay." As I locked the door, I remembered my mother's words, "Life is like the 4 seasons. After winter, spring will come." Yes, winter was over. It was time to welcome my spring. Stepping out of the building, the sunlight was just right. The sycamore trees were shedding their leaves. Golden leaves dancing in the wind. My mother loved this season. She said it was a season of transition, a season of harvest, and a season of new beginnings.